Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So this book review is going to be a little late. It's Saturday now, and I actually was just waiting for a nice weather opportunity to record book reviews, and since an opportunity did not present itself. Um, wait, since an opportunity, such an opportunity did not present itself. That's what I wanted to say. If you see the dog behind me and she looks wet, it's because it's raining cats and her today. So then this was kind of my last opportunity to get outside. We will be doing some, but I'm just going to do a session of book reviews inside, and then our next session will be outside. So I don't know. I usually get 4 or 5 in a session. Yeah. So today, Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. Now, this is not our usual book, but I do make exceptions, and we're going to be. The idea when I decided to do book reviews, one of the things that I really wanted to do was kind of explain to people why they should be reading books, right, and certain books. So the idea wasn't necessarily to stick all with sci-fi or fantasy, although we do. Discworld has stuck us into a lot of fantasy, and the Hugo Award winners stuck us into a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. This is neither. This is kind of like historical fiction comedy. It's very in the vein of the work of Vonnegut as well. So let's just read the back cover. 50 years after its original publication, Catch-22 remains a cornerstone of American literature and one of the funniest and most celebrated books of all time. In recent years, it has been named to best novels lists by Time, Newsweek, the Modern Library, and the London Observer. Set in Italy during World War II, this is the story of the incomparable, malingering bombardier, Yossarian, a hero who is furious because thousands of people he has never met are trying to kill him. But his real problem is not the enemy, it is his own army, which keeps increasing the number of missions the men must fly to complete their service. Yet if Yossarian makes any attempt to excuse himself from the perilous mission he's assigned, he'll be in violation of Catch-22, a hilariously sinister bureaucratic rule. A man is considered insane if he willingly continues to fly dangerous combat missions. But if he makes a formal request to be removed from duty, he is proven sane and therefore ineligible to be relieved. Okay. Yeah. So that's the Catch-22 in Catch-22, which Catch-22 clearly is a phrase that has entered the English lexicon and immortalized this novel and Joseph Heller. And the idea is that you're allowed out of the army if you're crazy, but if you ask to get out, you must not be crazy because you want to preserve your life, which self-preservation makes you sane. That's the rule in Catch-22. Now, here's the thing: is Catch-22 first off is laugh out loud funny. Like the reason there are reasons it's a classic, and one is it's poignant. Like Yossarian is not. He talks about the enemy in a way that's irrational, like saying things like, all these people are trying to kill me. And you're like, that's funny. But, like, he is in a war zone and he knows it. And he is terrified. He's terrified of the idea that, like, war can end your life. And when I tell you it's laugh out loud funny, it is. But don't make the mistake that this novel will not terrify and that it's not a poignant piece of work, because it is. It is a poignant piece of literature that is hard-hitting and amazing. However, it's also laugh out loud funny, which is seriously got to be one of the hardest things to do with a piece of literature, to make a genuinely enjoyable comic novel about a war and not trivialize war, like not make it all just like pop guns that say bang out of flags in the end and things like that. And that's not what this novel does. What this novel does is show you kind of the insanity of the entire institution, of a bunch of people getting together and go, hey, you know that other bunch of people we've never met? Here's what we need to do. We need to kill them. And fundamentally, war is one of the more absurd concepts that humans have. Like, we really have some very absurd concepts, and like that's the thing. That's what makes it so Vonnegut. Vonnegut will be like, well, it's it's ridiculous to say that everybody's equal and everybody isn't equal. Like, we don't treat everybody equal. So, like, look at this thing that, like, everybody holds this all men are created equal thing dear, but, like, look at how these people aren't equal. And you're like, ah, ha, ha, that's like this phrase that you made, like, right? But, like, and Vonnegut's a master at that. But Heller goes, well, you know what we should do that with? We should do that with war. And you go like, oh, okay, like, yeah, let's have a go at it. So, and so let's just read a passage, and you'll see kind of how this is structured, and you'll understand kind of where this is going. So, almost overnight, the glorious Loyalty Oath Crusade was in full flower, and Captain Black was enraptured to discover himself spearheading it. He had really hit on something. All the enlisted men and officers on combat duty had to sign a loyalty oath to get their map cases from the intelligence tent, a second loyalty oath to receive their flak suits and parachutes from the parachute tent, a third loyalty oath for Lieutenant Bulkington, the motor vehicle officer, to be allowed to ride from the squadron to the airfield in one of the trucks. Every time they turned around, there was another loyalty oath to be signed. They signed a loyalty oath to get their pay from the finance officer, to obtain their PX supplies, to have their hair cut by the Italian barbers. To Captain Black, every officer who supported his glorious Loyalty Oath Crusade was a competitor, and he planned and plotted 24 hours a day to keep one step ahead. He would stand second to none in his devotion to country. When other officers had followed his urging and introduced loyalty oaths of their own, he went them one better by making every son of a bitch who came to his intelligence tent sign 2 loyalty oaths, then 3, then 4. Then he introduced the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, the Star-Spangled Banner. 1 chorus, 2 choruses, 3 choruses, 4 choruses. Each time Captain Black forged ahead of his competitors, he swung upon them scornfully for their failure to follow his example. Each time they followed his example, he retreated with concern, and racked his brain for some new stratagem that would enable him to turn upon them scornfully again. Without realizing how it had come about, the combat men in the squadron discovered themselves dominated by the administrators appointed to serve them. They were bullied, insulted, harassed, and shoved about all day long by one and after the other. When they voiced objection, Captain Black replied that people who were loyal would not mind signing all the loyalty oaths they had to. To anyone who questioned the effectiveness of the loyalty oaths, he replied that people who really did owe allegiance to their country would be proud to pledge it as often as he forced them to. And to anyone who questioned the morality, he replied that the Star-Spangled Banner was the greatest piece of music ever composed. The more loyalty oaths a person signed, the more loyal he was. To Captain Black, it was as simple as that. And he had Corporal Kaladny sign hundreds with his name each day, so that he could always prove he was more loyal than anyone else. The important thing is to keep them pledging, he explained to his cohorts. It doesn't matter whether they mean it or not. That's why they make little kids pledge allegiance even before they know what pledge and allegiance mean. To Captain Pilchard and Captain Wren, the glorious Loyalty Oath Crusade was a glorious pain in the ass, since it complicated the tasks of organizing the crews for each combat mission. Men were tied up all over the squadron, signing, pledging, and singing, and the missions took hours longer to get underway. Effective emergency action became impossible, but Captain Pilchard and Captain Wren were both too timid to raise any outcry against Captain Black, who scrupulously enforced each day the doctrine of continual reaffirmation that he had originated, a doctrine designed to trap all those men who had become disloyal since the last time they signed a loyalty oath the day before. It was Captain Black who came with advice to Captain Pilchard and Captain Wren as they pitched about in their bewildering predicament. He came with a delegation and advised them bluntly to make each man sign a loyalty oath before allowing him to fly on a combat mission. Of course it's up to you, Captain Black pointed out. Nobody's trying to pressure you, but everyone else is making them sign loyalty oaths, and it's going to look mighty funny to the FBI if you two are the only ones who don't care enough about your country to make them sign loyalty oaths too. If you want to get a bad reputation, that's nobody's business but your own. All we're trying to do is help. Milo was not convinced and absolutely refused to deprive Major Major of food, even if Major Major was a communist, which Milo secretly doubted. There's a character named Major Major. He actually eventually becomes Major Major. And obviously they're not allowing him to sign loyalty oaths. And depriving him of food because he won't, right? Milo took a firm moral stand and absolutely refused to participate in the glorious Loyalty Oath Crusade until Captain Black called upon him with his delegation and requested him to. National defense is everybody's job, Captain Black replied to Milo's objection. And this whole program is voluntary, Milo. Don't forget that. The men don't have to sign Pilchard and Wren's loyalty oath if they don't want to. But we need you to starve them to death if they don't. It's just like Catch-22. Don't you get it? You're not against Catch-22, are you? Dr. Nico was adamant. What makes you so sure Major Major is a communist? Well, you never heard him denying it until we began accusing him, did you? And you don't see him signing any of our loyalty oaths. You aren't letting him sign any. Of course not, Captain Black explained. That would defeat the whole purpose of our crusade. Look, you don't have to play ball with us if you don't want to. What's the point of the rest of us working so hard if you're going to give Major Major medical attention the minute Milo begins starving him to death? I just wonder what they're going to think up at Group about a man who's undermining our whole security problem. They'll probably transfer you to the Pacific. Like, okay. So that kind of mind-numbing, like, in a way, the things that are happening here make some sort of sense, right? Like, they make some sort of organizational sense, like how these things could happen. And on their face, they're ridiculous. Like, they're absolutely ridiculous. But anybody who has been in any kind of hyper-structured environment, like at the bottom rung of a corporation or something, knows that these are the kind of things that happen, right? Like, that these are the kind of things that happen all the time. Is that somebody goes like, oh, well, we may have a problem with this. Like, justify your job. And somebody else is like, okay, we'll put out a training video for this. And then, like, by the time it filters down to the guys at the bottom, you're like, what was the point of all of this nonsense? That just, like, I have to sit through, like, 2 weeks of training to, like, to learn how to not cut myself with a knife because, like, some legal department decided that, like, some guy should justify his job by, like, blah, 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 blah. And, like, that's what the whole army is like throughout this entire book, is, like, doing things like this. And you're like, none of these things make any sense, but, like, hilariously don't make any sense and are entirely believable. Like, that's what's amazing about Catch-22, is that it's this slapstick, believable comedy, where you just kind of, like, where Heller brilliantly holds up a mirror to the idea of kind of the bureaucracy and the organization of men in wartime and the concept of war itself. And, like, and ideas like that, where it's just like, you know, men having to sign loyalty oaths to get their food and to get their equipment and to get rides in jeeps and to get whatever else. Like, those things are, you know, they are not beyond the scope of the kind of things that human beings, like, would do to one another in a situation like this. You kind of go through this. You kind of go through Catch-22. And, like, yes, it's laugh out loud. And here's the thing, is that, like, and this is maybe a minor spoiler for the book, but, like, the wonderful thing about Catch-22 is that you read something like that and you go, well, where's the point for poignancy, right? Like, where does the slapstick abruptly become something that, you know, will make me care about characters and things? And here's the answer is, there's a war going on, right? Like, it's a war now. Like, don't forget that going in. Like, don't for a second forget that there's a war happening. But Catch-22, like, I mean, here's the thing, is there are books that I like. There are books that I will tell you to read. There are books that I think, you know, are good reads, and I'd be like, yeah, you should, you know, you can read this book and things like that. And then there are books that, from the time where I was in kind of when I was majoring in English Lit and things like that, there are these books that are kind of these jewels in my esteem. These books that I think are kind of these unassailable classics of what people can do with words. And Catch-22 is amazing that way. It's one of those things where you read it and you just go, I never would have imagined that someone could put together a piece of art that is kind of so delightfully entertaining and yet says so much about one of the aspects of human life that is kind of so absolutely tragic, bloody, and destructive at its very core. And Heller just nails it. There's not a single page. This copy of Catch-22 clocks in it. And by the way, I'm being eaten alive by this dog. I'm being eaten alive. You can't really see. This is what's going on. This is what's going on below the camera. So this copy is it looks like it's about 450 pages. It's worth every page. I mean, like it will you'll fly through it. You won't regret a single page. Heller wrote an incredibly tight and very like just brilliant. It's just a brilliant piece of work. It's a masterpiece of kind of modern literature. So yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. I think it's a legendary book. I think everybody should read it. And when we come back, it should be book review number 100, and we will be talking about the book that I consider to be the great American novel. So I'll see you for that.